And away we go. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world today. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where I am as we go live, and that is Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, or Prepper University. It is being broadcast on both channels simultaneously, or you may be listening on Fistful of Radio. That is fistfulofradio.com, podcasting service out of Atlanta, where I can be found Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon, as I am surrounded by felines and being very, very heavily distracted here. Again, I've got 3 new kittens and a mama in the little cat shelter, and they are adorable. I don't know if you've seen this one up close yet. This is the smallest one. This is like the runt. Look at the size of the ears on this thing. But they're all sweethearts and we love them. So as we take a look at some of the people that are coming in here today, because of course I do try to read as many comments as I can, so people who are listening and not watching are able to follow along and understand what's going on. There's another one asleep on the table there. You see him? For those of you who can see me laying on the table, that's the one that sleeps on top of my head. I see Helter is here. D-Lo is here. Nice and early, D-Lo. Dragon is here. Ali is here. It says, good to be seeing you. Hope everything is doing well. Hanging in there. Keisha is here. Monkey. Spectre. Boogers is here. Cruising is here. Says the cat has Goblin as the base body type. Yeah, he's really, really lanky and got big ears. Where is that other one? I don't want him pulling any cords out. Get out from behind there. It's gonna back here trying to chew on cables. And Cyber Jack Senior is here. I always go to mess that up. And Urban is here. Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon, or it may not be afternoon where you are. It may be a different time altogether. We do get people from Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, different parts of Europe or South America sometimes signing in. Don't step on the keyboard, honey. Come here. I know, very distracting, but they're young. I love you, but give me a break. And Bams says 21:03. So 9 p.m. and change. And Urban says 11 a.m. in Canada. West Coast. Yep. That would be pretty early West Coast right now. As we get ready. Oh, and there's Stacy. Stacy Lynn is there. And as far as the cat, this is the other one. His markings are very dark. And he's very rambunctious, very aggressively affectionate. He likes to bite and chew on things like your ear and your nose. Anyways, before we get into the news here, again, thanks to everybody who has helped out with the channel, with the cats and the stray cat project through GoFundMe and PayPal, and even here on YouTube, for those of you who are watching who have made an effort to help us out as we take care of a lot of animals. We got what, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 we're taking care of right now with these 4 that just came in. So we appreciate it. And now we can go ahead and we'll start taking a look at some of the snippets from the news, some things from the media that have caught my attention, and I will share them with you. And this is a big one, and I think it's big for all the wrong reasons. And this, of course, comes from NBC News, and it says, Houston parents push back against the state's school takeover. The state's school takeover in Houston. And there you see Mike Miles, and that's the Houston Independent School District Superintendent. And I hate how they put these labels on public schools, by the way. Before I even read the article, let me hit that right there. Houston Independent School District. They love doing that, don't they? They love calling it an independent school or a magnet school, but they are public schools. They're not independent. They're not magnet schools. They're not true magnet schools. Job Corps is like the only true magnet school that is run by the government in the United States. And it says earlier this month, Courtney Revels made her way through the streets of Houston, knocking on door after door with a single message for the community: pay attention to what's happening in the Houston Independent School District. The effort, called Block Walking, was organized by the grassroots advocacy group Community Voices for Public Education. And Revels is among many concerned parents and advocates hoping to raise awareness about the swath of changes being made to the school system in Houston. There's really only one in particular, and we'll get into that in a minute. Quote, the reason we started knocking doors and doing our block walking campaign is because we realized a lot of people, especially people whose kids who no longer in the educational system, did not realize what's going on, Revels told NBC News. To be fair, most people do not know what's going on in their public school. They have no freaking idea what's going on in public school, number one. And number two, who answers the door anymore? I hate it when people come to my door. I don't want you coming to my door. I don't care what the hell it is. Salesman, whatever. People with a petition, go the hell away. You can't trust it. There's way too many daylight burglaries that take place because of people going door to door, even with fake credentials. In March, following a year-long court battle, the state's public education entity, the Texas Education Agency, took control of the school district from its elected board. The following month, the state appointed Mike Miles as superintendent, and he soon instituted a plan called the New Education System, an initiative to reform a district plagued by low reading levels and standardized test scores, according to HISD website. NES schools will implement several reforms, including a more rigorous instruction in an effort to improve academic outcomes. The school in the new system largely serve Black, Latino, and low-income students. Don't make it about that. If they're failing, they're failing. Since NES came into being, critics have complained about the numerous changes being introduced, such as eliminating nearly 24 special education contracting jobs, changing dual language programs, and converting at least 28 school libraries into discipline areas called team centers, where students with behavioral issues can attend classes virtually. All right, now here's what's going on. They're complaining about this. You don't complain about any of the anything else the public school does. They trample your rights every day. This you whine about. The dual language programs, teaching the class bilingually because the students can't be bothered to learn English. I don't have a problem with that. When I was growing up, that wasn't allowed. Converting 28 school libraries into discipline areas. They're not discipline areas. They're intensified learning areas for disruptive students or students that have learning problems or aren't paying attention or don't care. Don't rub on the microphone, honey. Come here. Anyways, the libraries aren't getting used by any of these students, so repurpose them into something useful instead of wasting more money is the problem. And this you're complaining about. We're going to try to do better to make your children perform better in school. This is what you complain about. You don't complain about Drag Queen Day. You don't complain about alphabet social learning programs. You don't complain about any of the other socio-political garbage they spoon feed these kids. You complain about them repurposing a library that isn't being used so that they can centralize it for focus groups. That's your problem. And JD says, do you ever rehome the cats? Yes, actually. That's the big joke all week, is that I just got 2 rehomed from out back. And now I've got 4 more. But yeah, we do rehome them. We work with a local shelter through, oh God, what's the name of that place? Now I'm drawing a blank. There's a shelter we work with that's actually a dog shelter that helps us connect with another cat shelter in another county. Deborah says DARE really helped this generation now, and that's DARE. And JD says those independent or charter schools is just code for the schools are non-union and staffed with people not good enough to get jobs at schools that are union, and they work for less pay too. Deborah says it shows kids what drugs look like, what they do, how to make them. LOL, they taught them all right. Yeah, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the DARE program. And Nature Nerd says multiple hurricanes and fires in the U.S., floods in China and California. 2 countries in Africa get military coups in 2 weeks, and Biden is on vacation. Well, the man's got to rest. He works hard. He works hard for the money. Okay. Urban says, I feel it's too late to fix the corruption on the education boards and puppet teachers unions. Time to set up a parallel home-based system, support system for communities. Mennonites in the Valley do well. And Cruising says, oh God, I don't know where to start on that being a bad idea. And Deborah says, teen centers. Yeah. And how about kicking them out of school? Well, they're not learning anything anyway. And Bingo said, good afternoon, everyone. I mean, it was a failure system when I was in school in the 70s and 80s. And I went to, and I was in Boston, major urban area. They couldn't do the job then. And it's gotten much worse. Helter says the business bros and their political cronies have made no effort to hide it anymore. They need obedient worker drones, and you can't have obedient worker drones when people are smart. And Bam says, what the heck do you need libraries for when you have drag day? I never used the school library. Nobody did. They had the designated day or for half an hour or an hour once or twice a week where they made you go to the school library. Basically, the kids just dicked around, and this is elementary through to high school. If I wanted to go to the library, I went to the local library. The stuff that was in the school library was garbage. Bingo says, I just got into an argument with Google's new AI board about climate change. You're wasting your time. Dragon says the grades are down. Let's remove the libraries only in America. Well, if they're not using them, what's the point? Because then what's the alternative? Oh, well, we need more tax dollars to open up another building or to buy more equipment. So he sat there and said, well, hell, nobody's using them. I mean, I kind of get the logic there. People may not agree with it, but there's worse things going on in that school than repurposing the library for however long. Where are we here? Deborah says, I didn't even have drag and beauty school back then, but others died from AIDS. Okay. And Urban says, but if there were no libraries, then we would have poor oppressed drag queen read creepy stories to kids. Okay. Yeah. But this is the complaint. And like I said, all that's going on in the public school system, that problems decades long, this is your complaint. This is what you complain about. Whether it's a system that's going to work or not, at least an effort's being made without spending more money, because it's your tax dollars. And when they need more, they're going to raise your taxes and still fail. And still failure. The public school system is a failure system right now. Failure system. And again, I never used the school library when I was in school because it was worthless. And this was a big inner city schools. I went to the public library, and there was one that was really close to me. So I would, even as a young person, I used to like to read a lot. And that's really what I attribute my education to, because I don't think I learned anything in public school. The whole thing was a blur from kindergarten right through to high school. The only thing I remember are the fights. It's a total waste. Bingo says, I told him climate change is trends. He said, no, it's man-made. So I told him Google programmed you to say that and start thinking for yourself. I see. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? But that's my angle on it. It's like, this is what you complain about now. It's a little late, isn't it? A little late to start bucking the system. You need to get away from that system. You need to escape it. It's permanently damaged, and it's a money pit. And all it can do is ask for more money and waste it and waste it and waste it. It's insane. It's an insane system. And again, Einstein's definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And that's all they do, is they keep doing the same damn thing. And Cruising says, issue with school libraries is they build their collections for young adults recent BS aside, which everything in it is dumbed down and compared to the masterpieces you can find in a real library. And Stacy says, how do you think the world's going to be in 2050? A damn mess. It's already a disaster. It's already unrecognizable. And Deborah says, I always took my boys to the library and put them in reading programs in the summer. And Tim is here. Thanks for joining us today, Tim. Stacy says, sometimes I feel scared how the world is going to be later. All you can do is worry about what's going on right now, because the future is always in flux. Now, this is from the American Insider, and it says, Joe Biden's lies never stop, because he's been caught up in another big one. And it's incredible to me that he keeps doing this. He keeps making stuff up, and he's getting called out on it, and it doesn't stop him because he's not being held accountable at all. He's not being he's being challenged in the media because they can't even cover it up anymore, but it's not going anywhere. Nature Nerd says all people read is short, dumb posts on social media, and the only books people read are the books required in schools, which your parents also read. Not that great. And then Cruising says, to put it in another way, kids bop never inspired any musicians. Listening to real artists does. And there's Derp Von Franz. Says this all started in 1918 when Rockefeller took over the schools and started the programming. Also, general relativity is starting to be noticed as a huge lie. Einstein is nothing but BS, he says. Okay. And Dilo says, I'm here. Weren't you already here? I thought I saw you comment earlier. Keisha says, did you see the video where Mitch McConnell froze at another speech? Yeah, that's scary, actually. There's only 2 times you freeze like that. One is if you have split personality disorder, because it's not like on TV where you just suddenly someone else. A person who actually has split personality disorder, they just kind of, it looks like they're almost kind of nodding off for a few seconds, and then they pop up as somebody else. The other time is when the synapses, they're just not firing. The connection's not being made, and it puts them in a temporary state of confusion where they might look dazed or, just blanked out and then pop back in. And that could be the sign of brain damage or mental illness. And JD says, welcome to Wymerica. Deborah says they don't even teach kids things kids really need to know to survive: sewing, cooking, record keeping, etc. No, all of those home economic programs have long since been expunged. And Anarchy says JB keeps making those Whopper kind of lies, not the little ones. Yeah, that's true. The lies he tells are insane, and they're easy to fact check. They're easy for people to look and see and say, okay, you know what? That didn't happen. What are you talking about? Like the last one that he told in Maui about how his house burned down. His house didn't burn down. He had a small kitchen fire. The fire department was there 20 minutes. It's all on record. It's all on record. He lied about the whole damn thing. And Moki Alex is here. Thanks for joining us today. And Bingo said, our school board just decided on their own to install gates at the schools, so when they go into lockdown, the parents can't come get their kids. They completely ignored the community that said no. Because the community has no rights. The school does whatever it wants. And Derp says, have you seen the vid where whoever is playing Biden mask was seen from behind? I think it's an easy search on YouTube. I don't think I've seen that. And Urban wants to know what was the question that froze McConnell. I don't remember. I looked at the story, but I don't recall what it was they were talking about. But just really quick here, American Insider talking about Joe Biden caught again. It says, during a prepared speech, they're all prepared for Joe, okay? Biden falsely claimed that he convinced former Senator Strom Thurmond to vote for the Civil Rights Act. In reality, Strom Thurmond voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Moreover, Joe Biden was only 21 and wasn't even in Congress. Former doctor for the Obama administration, Ronnie Jackson, says Biden isn't mentally capable of handling the duties of the presidency. Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history at 80. He'll be 82 if reelected. Quote, and this is Biden talking, quote, pause for just a moment. I thought things had changed. Biden said during the speech, I was able to literally, not figuratively, talk Strom Thurmond into voting for Civil Rights Act before he died. And I thought, well, maybe there's real progress, but hate never dies. It just hides. It hides under the rocks, he said. And it goes on to tell you that Thurman opposed both the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Thurman also holds the record for the longest ever filibuster, opposing while opposing. That's bad syntax. That always kills me when I see this. If this was an MLS paper, it would have gotten sent back. Opposing the Civil Rights Act in 1957. Basically, I mean, I don't think he ever even met Strom Thurmond. But now it's because of him that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 took place, because he personally talked Strom Thurmond into accepting it. That's what happened, Joe. Seriously? That's what you did? It's incredible. Dilo says you have ads. Wow, I'm not in trouble yet? That's incredible. And Cruising says record keeping is taught. That is exactly what keeping a portfolio of your work is. Issue is that the students aren't invested enough to care why they are learning how they do it, so they forget. And Nature Nerd says McConnell froze when he was asked, will you run for re-election? Oh, I see. Okay. And Bam says, so he was probably wondering if he'll still be alive. Bam said, so the school wants to be the next Maui, and then they are. And JD says Joe Biden doesn't know what he's saying, and you can't blame it on dementia either. He literally told Joe Canseco that if it wasn't for him, he couldn't have played pro baseball. Oh, crap. And Nature Nerd says McConnell looks like he's aged 10 years in a month. And there is Stefan. Stefan Riley is here. Thanks for joining us today. Helter says this kind of lying is the political version of stolen valor. Very good point. All stories to make Biden look heroic instead of the mediocre goofball that he is. Quote, I got arrested while visiting Nelson Mandela. Did he now? Did he spend time in jail with him too? I was in jail for 28 years with Nelson Mandela. True story. Dragon says, considering the Civil Rights Act was passed in 64, 8 years before Biden was elected to Congress, and Strom Thurmond died in 2003, that must have been one heck of a long conversation. Yeah. Well, he went back in time. This is the part that people don't understand. You ever seen Doctor Who? He's got his own TARDIS, and he slips back and forth in time, and that's how he's able to do these things. And Urban says, Biden reminds me of the character from Chauncey Gardner, played by Peter Sellers in the 1979 film Being There. I don't know if I saw that, or maybe I saw it and I don't remember. But, I mean, that's a whopper. That's a whopper right there. And they keep getting bigger and bigger, the tall tales that he tells. There must be someone on his team that is saying, hey, man, don't do that again, huh? Because people don't believe you. They're not buying it. Although I'm sure that most of the people that work for him are too intimidated, because as I understand it, he's a terrible bully with his staff, shouting at people, cussing people, threatening people, that, they probably don't want to deal with him. They just kind of let him drift along and hope that he doesn't lay into them. You know what I mean? And Stefan says, when are you going to make up another UPS video? I like watching those. Well, I don't know. Not too much more to say about UPS. I don't work for them anymore. I don't work for them anymore. Although they won their union bid, but I think that was just drivers again, and they always win because they're considered skilled labor by UPS. Over the road drivers, delivery drivers, pilots, mechanics are considered skilled labor, and the people that hump in the warehouse are not skilled labor, and they're considered very expendable. And they do blow through a lot of them. There's very few that have been there for a long period of time. But yeah, I don't know if there's much more to say about UPS. People get pretty mad at me in those videos. Monkey says, I feel bad for Biden's PR. Yeah, I can imagine. I'd hate that job. You'll never work again. A lot of the people that are working for people in an administration like this are going to be hard-pressed to find a job after it's all said and done. Derp says, has anyone looked at gematria and the Jesuits, everything in the media is all by the numbers. Their level of cleverness is vast. And then Nature Nerd says most of Congress is geriatric, and a lot of the younger ones are dumb psychopaths. I think I did something on that some couple of months ago. The median age in Congress is something like 60. It's crazy. Stefan says we did get the raise, but we still didn't get our hours back. Okay. And JD says, I was the FBI agent that threatened to expose MLK if he didn't disappear within 30 days. Is that quoting Biden? And Stefan says they laid off the same guy that worked in my area again. Yeah, that was a hard job. Loading and unloading is very hard and very unforgiving. Derp says, forgot to ask, you got that lap kitty again today. Actually, he's behind me. Where is he? Right there. That's him. He's sitting behind me. I think that's him. Yeah, that's him. And then his brother is right here behind the hole puncher. And then the other one, I don't know where he is. I don't know what happened to him. But yeah, he's sitting back there right now. The three of them were in a pile on top of each other there, and they broke up, and he still remained behind. And JD says it was the JFK data dump. And then Stefan says I didn't even see them. Yeah, they're back there on the desk. Now, this is also tying into Biden, and this is important because he's not as crazy as he comes off. He's not as crazy as he comes off, as dictated here by the Daily Caller. Biden asserted executive privilege to block release of hundreds of emails involving Hunter's business and VP office. Because now it's been discovered that, and we talked about it last week, I think, that Biden, while he was vice president, had a handful of pseudonyms that he used for undercover emails, if you will. And they're trying to get access to these emails now because a lot of them are tied into Ukraine businessmen, illegal dealings, and Hunter. And it's not hundreds. I've heard it's actually thousands. But, I haven't read this article yet, and we'll dig into it a little bit here. And it says the White House cited executive privilege in withholding hundreds of emails relating to Hunter Biden's business dealings, and then Vice President Joe Biden requested by America's First Legal, according to records request, returned to the legal firm. AFL, and that, of course, is America First Legal, released 3 batches of emails Wednesday that the National Archives provided in response to its August 2022 records request, which included over 1,000 emails between Hunter Biden's consulting firm, Rosemont Seneca, and the Office of the Vice President, among others withheld by the White House. 200 emails were kept back because they would, quote, disclose confidential advice between the president and his advisors or between such advisors, according to letters from the National Archives. President Joe Biden has previously claimed that he never spoke with his son about his business dealings overseas. As a candidate, Biden stated on August 28, 2019, that there would be, quote, an absolute wall between the personal and private and the government. During his presidency, stating that was, quote, the same thing he did as vice president. Quote again, I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their business, period. Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't even see how that's technically possible. The emails obtained by AFL also revealed Hunter Biden was involved in planning multiple White House events, including the January 2011 China State Luncheon. Email messages included the name Rosemont Seneca, included that bad syntax again, including and included in the same sentence. January, I know I get weird with that. January 2011 guest list for the China State Luncheon event held on January 19th, 2011. You don't have to keep repeating it, according to a document released to AFL. That would never pass as an ALS paper. Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devin Archer, told the House Oversight Committee in July that he heard Hunter talk to his father about his business deals more than 20 times. So he's enacting executive privilege to block access. And Derp says, LOL, those little buddies are so awesome. Yeah, they're a joy, actually. We love taking care of them. And Bingo says 5,000 plus, and we will never see them, just like Hillary's emails. Yeah, or if you do, they'll be redacted. They'll redact the hell out of them. And Moki says it's Dinah Francis Spencer, Prince of Wales today. And Ali says, I just replaced a chainsaw blade for the first time. It was surprisingly easy listening while doing yard work. Okay, that's good. And Monkey says, remember when Biden promised to be the most transparent administration? Yeah, but he means you. You have to be transparent. He'll do whatever the hell he wants. And Monkey says, does the executive power to hide Hunter's email? Yeah, apparently it does, because it relates to him somehow. But then he says he says that he didn't have business dealings with him and they never discussed business. Then he shouldn't be able to exercise executive power to protect Hunter's emails. And he is. So obviously he is mentioned or communicated with in those emails. Derp says it's almost like these articles are made by a poorly scripted AI, like most of the mainstream garbage. I wouldn't be surprised, because the syntax is just all out. Simple things that you would learn, that you should have learned in high school. Okay, I'll let that one go, and we'll just talk about college. In college, when you have to write an MLS paper, MLA paper, whatever the hell you got to write, you take classes to learn how to do that so you don't screw it up. And hopefully you remember that, and you don't use the same word twice in a sentence and things like that I read and I'm like, what are you doing? And you don't repeat yourself in a paragraph. Stuff like that is not acceptable. And you didn't used to see that in like newspaper articles and things like that. But in the last few years, it's been a lot of it. And yeah, it could be that they're letting a bot script it together for them. Urban says, if you think Biden's emails are interesting, imagine the next level corruption and criminality that would have been found on Clinton's hard drive had she not taken an axe to it. Yeah, you'd submerge it in acid. Cruising says we should start a rumor that Biden has information he's going to release about Hillary's emails. Oh yeah, I know. And then he'll kill himself. He'll put some antifreeze in his coffee and quietly slip away. Happy Gardner says journalists repeat items just to fill word count requirements because they don't have anything important to say. You can pad an article out without constantly repeating yourself. If you're a good writer, you can stretch it and emote it. Stefan says it's funny how they didn't fire me yet, despite me coming in late almost every day and calling out a lot. I even walked out one time. Oh no. Nature Nerd says, how many indictments would Biden have if he was a MAGA candidate? About 20. And Ali says, how many politicians do you think it takes to replace a chainsaw blade? Oh, 0, because they'll just pay someone else to do it. Cruising says, simple things you should have learned. Problem is the damn nutshell right there. And Dragon said, emails during the Obama administration showed that President Barack Obama used a pseudonym to email Hillary Clinton, who served as his Secretary of State. Yeah, they all do that. They all do that to try to cover their tracks. And they're eventually found out anyways. It's a waste of time. And Derp says you can see it in some of the story channels here on YouTube, like hilariously mispronouncing simple words and doubling up on words. Just bad AI. And Keisha says, doesn't an article have to have so many words? I don't know. I've seen some pretty short ones. In theory, it should have at least 3 paragraphs. And let me see. That's technically 1, but that's your title. That's your descriptor. So you got your title, you got your descriptor that feeds off of the title. Paragraph 1, that sentence should connect to this one. So that's paragraph 2, right? The end of 2, because it's broken by this ad. And then here's 3, and then they have a couple more here for good measure. But, there's not much here. Technically, it's 5 paragraphs. 5 paragraphs, not counting the descriptor. And the last paragraph should be a closer. But yeah, it shouldn't you shouldn't have to repeat yourself to fill that up. I wouldn't think so. I would hope not. But, you know, I'm not an editor, so I can't tell them what to do. They don't work for me. They don't work for me. That's all I have to say. Yeah, it's nap time, I guess. Everybody's got a full belly if that makes them sleep a lot. Now, here's something that's been going on a lot, and it's only just recently getting called out. They're starting to call it out. Okay? And this comes from the Telegraph, and this guy is in the UK. And they're making an issue of it because people like this have been getting away with things on account of this claim. It says transmogrified, oh, I don't know if I can say that word either. Transmogrified playground watchers are laughing at Britain. We'll call it that, and hopefully I won't get in trouble. The clearest example of how self-identification, where men can simply declare that they are women, is an unimagined disaster. Is when sex offenders declare that they are suddenly female following the offense. They did it again. Is an unimagined disaster is when. That that's so badly done. Wow. That is an unimagined disaster is when offenders. No. Is when an unimagined, or start from an unimagined disaster is when. They got is in there twice. Continuing on. We have all seen it. Isla Bryson in Scotland, Karen White in England, and many other cases where alleged rapists decide prior to trial or sentencing that they are female. The latest scandal is that of Dominic Carter, who attended court this week dressed in pink and claiming to be a woman named Sophie. Carter had been discovered with several child abuse images on his laptop, two of which were in the most serious category. He was prosecuted under his original name of Dominic Carter, but at the sentencing hearing, Carter's lawyer addressed the court to inform the judge that Carter is now known as Sophie and identifies as a female. He didn't even try. Look at this guy. 5 o'clock shadow and all. He put... Oh, man. It's hilarious. For those of you who can't see, he's got full-on 5 o'clock shadow. His hair looks like it hasn't been brushed. He's got one of those big hair elastics, a pink one, and a pink shirt. And now he's a chick. Stefan says you seem to get in trouble a lot. Well, the bots are targeting certain phrase words, and they're targeting the channel specifically, and I can prove it now. And I was thinking about doing a video on it, but I think I might get in trouble for the video. But I did a comparison test between two different channels, and I'm able to actually technically prove they're targeting the channel rather than the content. Tyrannicide says AI is writing the articles. I wouldn't be surprised. Or the writer is using a bot to do it. Because, you know, a writer is, like right here, it says Julie Bendel, story by Julie Bendel. Julie Bendel is letting something else collaborate her writing, because that would never make it past the editor's desk in the newspaper in the 1980s. You got is on here twice, fix it, you know, and they'd keep sending it back with critiques. Urban says the euphemist acronym is MAP. Oh, yeah, I don't even want to read that. This is accepted terminology now. I know, that's unacceptable to me. Derp says, well, one of the worst things we as people can do is stand by watching evil do its thing. Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on. Monkey says that looks like Logan Paul. Cruising said it's almost like anyone exposed to the system knows that women get lighter sentences, or he wants to end up in a women's facility. Prime says, but he's wearing pink. Don't diss the A-cups. Hey, not everybody can afford the double Z, the double Z prosthetic breasts like that guy in Canada. Tyrannicide Says, I'm willing to meet them halfway and call them MAFs, minor fedophiles. And Stefan says, I look forward to watching it. And Keisha says they're using MAP to make it be normal sexually. Yeah, and there's nothing normal about it. Nothing. Fluke Man says, late again, better late than never. No problem. Glad you could make it. We're talking about our latest acquisition into the realm of insanity here, Dominic Carter, who is being sentenced or brought into court because of having minor pornography, and declared suddenly out of the blue that he is a woman and that his name is Sophie now. And if you can see the image here that, I mean, that's obviously just a dude in a pink shirt. Continuing the article, as feminists have long pointed out, the arguments put forward by these men that they really are women is deeply offensive to actual women. That should be offensive to every woman, not just a feminist. These characters often seem to favor stereotypical, quote, female attire, pink dresses, long hair, painted nails. We are not a costume and do not wish to be defined as female based on feminine frippery and sexist stereotypes. We are biologically female and have been socialized as such. Transmogrified, identified men are neither. Yeah, well, the law says that they are. So you can't sit there now after you've allowed this to go on for more than a decade, because that's how long this has really been picking up steam. They've been around longer than that, for a few decades. Really, they started cropping up in the late 80s and being more seen, if you will, not hiding as much in the late 80s. But now it's encouraged. They put you on a pedestal for it. RuPaul's got a whole show based on this garbage where men run around in drag. The whole concept is socially acceptable, or not from society's standpoint, but from the media's standpoint, socially acceptable. Bam says, I would also prefer a woman's prison. And there's a lot of complaints from women's prisons because the system has been putting these guys in there, and there's all sorts of assault charges coming out of those interactions. And who's protecting those women in those prisons? Keisha said, speaking of, are you going to see the Sound of Freedom movie? I don't know. I still haven't seen it. I haven't seen a new film in a couple of years. Helter says, people have been warning everyone that this would eventually happen, but they were just called bigots and transphobic and homo. Yeah, they're called phobic, this and that and the other. Dragon says, I wonder if he could sign the register as a female under the female name and then go back to living as a man whose name is not on the register if he's free from that registry's legal bindings. That's an interesting question, actually. I don't know if I can answer that for you, but that's an interesting question because, yeah, you create the possibility for a loophole. Urban said, Bud Light quickly found out what happens when their mascot flaunts their creepy woman face at regular women. Yeah, and again, the whole thing with Dylan, I think he faked it. I think he is faking it. I think he's a complete fraud, and he doesn't think he's female at all. And also, you can catch it because at first he was pretending to be a little girl. I'm a little girl. And then after Bud Light, I'm a woman. Well, which is it, Dylan? I don't know. I think he's an actor. He was a professional actor, and he's still acting. He found something that works. He was a professional actor who was not well known, didn't get good parts, wasn't making good money. He's making money now. Keisha says, I read that 80% of trafficking are through the parents. I don't know. I never heard that. I never heard that. Doesn't mean it isn't true, but I haven't heard it. Cougar says, very late, but here. Well, glad you could join us, Cougar. You see my little fur babies here? I got one right there next to the hole puncher. If you can see him, there's another one way back here on the keyboard or behind it. They were all piled up there, and then they moved around, and he's all that's left. If you're looking for cats. Everybody's always looking for cats in here, and I don't blame you. Now, this next story caught my attention because of how stupid it is. and I'll read it to you here in a moment. Cruising says fur babies, huh? Cringe. That's what people keep calling it. I've had them called fur babies by a lot of people who've made donations, especially on the GoFundMe page. Something to help the fur babies, and now it's kind of sticking to me. And all people says Millen Dulvaney to women is what Al Jolson was to. Oh wow. Oh man. Oh wow. Bam says, "Oh, now you have a new fluffy toy." No, they're living creatures. I don't think of them as toys or even pets. They're like companions. They're like my little cat friends. This is something from Fox News, and I think this is stupid, and I'll tell you why in a minute. It says college students are struggling with basic math. Many stuck at ninth grade level. Professors blame the pandemic. They blame the pandemic. Many students who lacked hands-on in-person teaching due to the C virus pandemic are subsequent lockdowns and school closures are now struggling with basic math at the college level, according to some professors. Quote, years of academy training wasted, Buzz Lightyear once famously said, but that fictitious line is now the reality for students at George Mason University. I don't know where that is. Temple University and other colleges across the country who once excelled at math and have been forced to relearn the basics as pandemic schooling failed to reinforce their learning. Other schools are grappling with the same problem as academic setbacks from the pandemic have followed students to campus. At many universities, engineering and biology majors struggle to grasp basic functions such as fractions and exponents. Some students are even being placed into pre-college math, starting a semester or more behind their program's requirements. Others are taking proactive action to avoid potential setbacks. Now, the reason why this bothers me is because this is not a new problem, and you can't sit there and blame the pandemic from a couple of years ago for failing math students in college. When I went to college a million years ago, they were failing the math courses. All right. What was the problem then? The problem then was they couldn't do the basics. The same problem that students are still having in public schools. Kids who went to private schools and kids who were homeschooled did really well in college. The kids who were coming from public schools struggled, particularly in English, literature, math, and philosophy classes. And the literature, math, and English are critical in the college. They could barely eke by. They don't know how to do the basic math: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, weights and measures. Can't do them. They rely on a calculator to do them. When I was in school, you couldn't use a calculator. You get suspended if you're caught with a calculator. Now that's the only way they know how to do them. So you can't sit there now and say, oh, well, they're doing terrible in math because of the pandemic from a couple of years ago and distance learning. They've been doing bad for decades. They've been doing bad for 20 years, at least. Now, all of a sudden, you have something you can blame it on that's not public school, and you want to go in that direction? Derp says they're all little buddies. Yeah, they are. And Cruising says, I think of my cats as freeloading slave drivers that would eat me tomorrow if I died today. Oh, no. And Bam says, no, I can see it. It's behind your head. Okay. And Derp says, the ones in power won't let intelligent, critically thinking people out there that are able to notice, challenge, and potentially have the ability to overpower them. They want controllable sheep. And Helda says, I think the primary problem that people have with math is that every other subject you just have to memorize the material. Yeah, math is a language. You're basically learning another language, and the deeper you get into it, the more complicated the language is. And you really got to kind of have that mentality. And, I'll tell you right now, I'm not good at algebra and things like that. I don't remember it. I don't use it. It's useless. And I hate that they teach you or force you to learn useless math. If I was going into certain sciences or, whatever, I could understand the need for it. But in real life, you don't use it, but you do use the basics that I already named off: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, and weights and measures. Those are the 6 basics that you should be able to pound it off the top of your head. 4 quarts is a gallon, whatever. You get the idea. And people can't do it. The kids can't. They're coming out of, again, going back to my days in juvenile justice and having the life skills classes. Kids graduating 3.8, 4.0 honor roll students, A in algebra, can't count freaking money. And we had all kinds of issues with that. Helter says in math, you have to follow a procedure. They were tested less on knowing the answer and more on show you work to prove you could follow the procedure. That's right. That's what the brown scratch paper was for. If you have to work it out on the brown scratch paper so that the teacher can see that you actually did it. Keisha says, it took a bit to love my cat. When I got her, I figured it's some sort of Stockholm syndrome. Cruising said, it's like most people just don't have a talent for critical thinking and logic. And Monkey said, at that point, the college student should either never go to college or go to a community college if they're that bad at math. At community college, you've still got to get through college algebra with at least a C. And then that C is not going to transfer to your university if you go, because it's too low of a grade. But I recommend choice 1 at this point if you can't grasp pre-calculus stuff. And then Prime says, if 100 times 0 is 0, where did the 100 go? And Bam said the school curriculum are stupid on purpose. And Urban said, by design, too many people in college. Historically, people would train on the job. Now everyone is in college. It seems to offer no advantage in many practical fields. And I agree. It's not everybody suited for it. Not everybody should go to college. It's a waste of money for a lot of people. That would be better off doing something else or learning a craft or a skill. And Deanna is here and said, stopping by to listen, used SCI calculators for chemistry only in high school, or scientific calculators, I guess they mean, for chemistry only in high school. And again, when I was in high school, calculator, suspension, you're going home. Dragon says, a lot of math teachers are just not great at explaining math. I usually find that certain websites or YouTube videos will explain things in a way that math phobes like myself can easily get. As I plow through some more of these comments. And Prime Mover says, people good at math are good at memorization. My nephew is a math genius, but I stomp him at chess. And Fluke Man says, do you think this domestic guy, aka Sophie, would at least wear a bra a day, stuff it with socks? And stuff it with socks. Oh, yeah, and stuff it with socks. Well, if he was being held, if he wasn't on bail, he probably couldn't get more than a pink shirt. And Monkey says, true, at least at my CC, they have remedial classes for building up on algebra. And Urban says, why follow a procedure when you can just ask AI on your phone? Exactly. And then Keisha said at one of the colleges here, they have free tutors. And All People says, to make matters a million times worse, for the sake of providing migrants with equity, colleges have been moving to pass and fail grade systems. And I want to point something out too. This article, good syntax. Since I've been trashing the other ones, no repetition, no using the same word over in this or keywords over in the same sentence or paragraph. Everything fed together. This article was properly written. Just saying. And that was Lawrence Richard at Fox News. I just wanted to throw that out there. Oh no. And then Cruising says, note that most math teachers are second career types that got bored in the cubicles or wanted a schedule more friendly for raising kids. Plus, the way that you have to teach it is not very efficient anyways, the way that the public school teaches it. And we were just talking about this sort of thing here. yesterday when we were talking about Chicago and how the Chicago mayor is suing automakers for not having cars that are more difficult to steal. And the primary reason they're being stolen is carjackings. And he does nothing about the carjackings, but he wants to sue automakers. That makes a lot of sense. And this also caught my attention. It's another Fox article. It says DC teens captured on video in attempted carjacking of Grubhub driver arrested and charged in robbery spree. 5 teenagers linked to a robbery and carjacking spree in Washington, D.C., because this has been going on in major cities all across the country, including one incident in which a driver for Grubhub was attacked, have been arrested and charged, police said Wednesday. The 5 suspects range in age from 13 to 16 years old and appeared in court Wednesday. They were described as 2 13-year-old girls and 3 boys aged 14, 15, and 16 consecutively. Their names were not released because they are being charged as juveniles, which means that unless they get in trouble in juvenile detention, they'll be out when they're 18. And that's a common misconception that they'll age out at 18. It depends on the state. Again, when I worked for juvenile justice in Kansas, they could hold you until you were 22 and a half and declare you a juvenile if you made trouble while in juvenile detention. They just hold on to you, and tough shit. But there's my question. I guess here they are in this picture, bystander photograph, captured attack in Washington, D.C., motorist by several teen suspects now charged with robbery, and here they are, they're kids. 13, 14, 15, and 16, 2 13-year-old girls running around in the streets, breaking into cars, robbing people in broad daylight. Where are their parents? Where the hell are their parents? And Cruising says, my renter is 57, has a 2015 Kia with minimum insurance, pays more a month for minimum insurance because of the easy to steal bit than I do for both of my Lincolns with more than full insurance. And 17 Joe says, my daughter was homeschooling and all of a sudden wanted to go to school. I told her you're making a mistake and she didn't listen. She went to school and it was a disaster. Back homeschooling again. Yeah. And I can totally see that. Well, you know, sometimes kids need to see. Some people, they need to experience it. They need to live the adventure, if you will. So she went to public school and it was a mess and realized, oh, crap. I know she realized or you pulled her out. I'm hoping she realized that, wow, this sucks. I'm not learning anything and these kids are nuts and these programs don't work, kind of a thing. Moki says fatherless home. Could be, because you can have 2 bad parents. You can have 2 parents who don't give a shit about you and ignore you and treat you badly and leave you to be raised by the system. You can have 2 bad parents in the home, and you can have a single parent who's really good and you're raised properly. Although having 2 parents in the home does help. But yeah, this is your youth. This is the youth that was causing problems 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, that prompted the introduction of public school in the first place as an alternative to gangs of children running the streets, robbing people, breaking windows, and causing other mischief. They needed a way to get the kids off the street. Never mind all the indoctrination stuff. The initial idea, how can we convince parents to let us round their kids up every day? Back when truancy officers used to grab kids off the street and bring them to the nearest school instead of showing up and getting you in trouble because your kid didn't go to school. 17 Joe says she realized. Good. Now then she learned something from it, and that's what's important. She made a mistake, followed through with her mistake, learned something, and said, okay, I get it now. And for some people, they need that, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing if you learn from your mistake. So wrap up a few more comments here. All People says all pass-fail grading systems lets a D- numerical score in a class pass, and the numerical score is not added to the overall GPA. I see. And Helter said, sadly, the DC government's going to be lenient and she'll be back on the streets. She's going to be a slap on the wrist for being a violent criminal because of her age. And Prime says, I have a very intelligent cousin in college. He's a lefty. Even smart people can be indoctrinated. That's true. And Dragon says, I've noticed there's been a trend of juvenile females involved in violent crimes lately. Oh, they're badasses, believe it. You know, the facility that I ran for JJA was primarily a female facility, as opposed to a co-ed facility, which is a bad idea. Okay. But yeah, I got all females. I rarely worked with a male. They're all females, and they were into some bad stuff. Bad stuff. You'd be surprised. And remember, this is some years ago. Almost all of them, drug history, history of prostitution, large history of sexual promiscuity, kids as young as 12 years old. And when you find out, you know, you read through the file or you talk to them and find out who they slept with, they were going to bed with people 20, 30, 40 years older than them. Prostitution with their mother. They're raised by their mother. Their mother was on drugs and a prostitute and brought them in. Weird stuff, but bad stuff. A lot of violence. I had a girl once that was transitioning out of the juvenile corrections who went into, she was about to turn 18, and that's why they put her in my facility. And I had to turn her back over to police the next day because she was so violent. And come to find, and they didn't disclose it to me, that when she was, I think, 13, she cut another girl's throat, killed her. And you're gonna, you know, it's like some of the stuff that these girls do, it'll shock the hell out of you. Keisha says, with some kids, the only time they get fed is at school. And All People says, the monstrous murderess named Melinda Lovelace is a perfect example of what you mean by two terrible parents raising one terrible kid. And we're going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. I'll wake one up and I'll show you one real quick. Come here, baby. Oh, you're awake. You come here. Come here, darling. Here he is. There he is. 3 brothers. I think all 3 are male. I'm pretty sure. And this is why I do it, folks. He's falling asleep. He's sagging in my hands. They're adorable. Anyways, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today at Coffee Talk. That's at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube if you're looking for me there, or Prepper University on YouTube. You can find me there as well, or fistfulofradio.com, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting service out of Atlanta. And you can find me there Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon. And of course, we have our own little, yeah, I know. Urban says time to set up a cat cam. I indeed, it'd probably get 1 million views while I'm killing myself on YouTube. But yeah, this is one of the new additions to our little cat shelter. Yeah, he is derp. I love his coloring too. He's got like this all personality right here. He's a sweetheart too. And this is the runt of the litter. He's smaller than the other ones, but he eats like a horse now. Gotta love him, right? You're a good boy. He's a good boy. They're all good boys. They're all good, even when they're bad. So thanks for joining us here today, and we will do this again soon.